What did you do during World War II?
I was an officer of the Royal Canadian Navy. I commanded the Newfoundland Escort Force from 1941 to 1943, then was the Commander-in-Chief for the Canadian Northwest Atlantic. So basically, I was a head officer who aided in the Battle of the Atlantic.
What inspired you to join the Navy?
I was born in Granton, Nova Scotia, where my mother and father made a living off the land. I was always out helping them, meaning that I was always near the water. From then on, I knew that I wanted to be a sailor or a fisherman. And when World War I started, being a fisherman wasn't very ideal.
What experience did you have with the Royal Canadian Navy before you became a high-end officer during World War II?
After graduating from the Royal Naval College, I served as a midshipman on the HMS Bruwick during the Mexican Revolution. I was then assigned to the protected cruiser HMCS Neuve, the longest ship in the Royal Canadian Navy throughout World War I.
How were you involved with the anti-submarine warfare idea?
I was Deputy Chief of Naval Staff and heavily advocated the small ship anti-submarine. It was a branch of underwater warfare that used surface warships, aircrafts, and other submarines to find damaged and destroyed convoy submarines. Eventually, they accepted my proposal, which was
Were you in charge of the Royal Canadian Navy destroyers?
yes, I was in charge of their construction, and later I was in charge of multiple destroyers at sea. In March of 1940, I made secret visits to Britain. I went to negotiate the construction of the destroyers in Britain for the Royal Canadian Navy. I was successful in doing so, which resulted in Canada's successful escorts for the convoys.
What role did you play as a commander of the Newfoundland Escort Force in St. John's?
Yes, I was in charge of their construction, and later I was in charge of multiple destroyers at sea. In March of 1940, I made secret visits to Britain. I went to negotiate the construction of the destroyers in Britain for the Royal Canadian Navy. I was successful in doing so, which resulted in Canada's successful escorts for the convoys.
What were the conditions in which your men had to adapt to?
Conditions were terrible, especially during the winter. Groups worked on a 35-day cycle, which entailed 29 days away from St. John's, 27 days away from fresh bread, 25 days away from fresh meat, added to which at the northern end of their beat there was no sunlight to break off in the winter. We had to revert to the old rations of Nelson's
What
time.
moment were you most proud of during the Battle of the Atlantic?
My singular moment of pride is when the largest convoy of World War II sailed from the UK via New York on July 17, 1944, with 170 merchant ships. It arrived in the UK without incident on August 3, 1944.
What role did you play as the Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian Northwest Atlantic?
I was in full command of 6 Canadian destroyers, 7 British destroyers, and 21 corvettes. They had the responsibility of convoy escort from New York up until transfer points to UK escorts south of Iceland.
What was it like being away from your family while fighting in the Battle of the Atlantic?
Because I was always dealing with plans to win the Battle of the Atlantic, I seldom had opportunities to truly be with my family, but although it was bad, it was much worse for my men. I got to see my family about twice a week as they came to visit me on the base, but my men did not have the opportunity while working. When my family did come to visit, they were only permitted to see me for some of the days, as I had meetings that were top secret that no one but myself